Hi, this is PC Roger, and in this short video what I want to cover is getting the firmware upgraded on your new TRENDnet camera. This obviously would also work if your camera is not new, but we did advise when you buy the camera, the first thing you want to do is see if you have the latest firmware and get it upgraded if you don't, because once you configure it, they do not recommend saving the configuration, upgrading the firmware of the camera, and then using that same configuration file again. They want you to rebuild it from scratch after resetting to factory defaults. Don't know why, and you might see some information in the documentation indicates you can do otherwise, but this is straight off their website right now. Now the two things you want to do, and I've just got two tabs open in the browser here. One is if you just put in TRENDnet and your model number, we're using the IP672WI firmware, one of the first couple of results will probably be the one you want. In this case, TRENDnet downloads Internet Camera TV IP672WI. And you can see here that they do have a driver utility. If you need to download that, it should be on the CD that came with, but you can download the latest copy here. And here's the firmware, and it's currently version 1.02. Now we log into our camera just by putting our IP address into the browser address bar there and logging in and clicking on setup. And a couple of places you can find the firmware. One is under advanced here, device info, firmware 1.0.2. And it was 100 when we first bought it. That's why we did go to this page on TRENDnet and download 102. Now if you want to, just for the fun of it I guess, save the configuration file here under Tools, System, and save the configuration file, and it'll just save a file that really is unreadable to us. It's not like you can open it in Notepad and kind of see what your settings were. But if it is possible at some point that to lose your configuration and you're not doing a firmware upgrade, this way you have a copy of it and you can load that later. But you want to do that after each firmware upgrade and reconfiguration. This is also where you would restore factory defaults after the firmware upgrade, or where you can reboot the device. So over here on the firmware download page, notice they say do not upgrade the firmware using a wireless connection. Use a cable. Just don't want anything to go wrong, because you can end up with a brick or a doorstop or paperweight, call it what you will, but it may not be operable. Now here, some other notes. It says do not save the camera's configuration file from the old firmware and restore it. After a successful firmware upgrade, please reset the camera to factory defaults and reconfigure the camera. So you better have some notes of anything important that you want to be able to reconfigure it for. And then of course change the password, because after you do a firmware upgrade and reset to factory defaults, the login will be admin. And then here of course below is also the Secure View Pro software if you're using that. But to download, we're just going to click download and get a warning here that this can permanently damage your unit, etc., but we're going to continue, and it's going to download the firmware. Now you can see here on the desktop, here's our settings.db. This is the file from saving the configuration, and here's our firmware file that we downloaded from TRENDnet's website. And if you just right click this zip file, you can select extract all, take the defaults I guess, extract it, and then here in the unzip files there's firmware history, an upgrade procedure, and the actual firmware file itself. It's a .bin file or bin file. So if you go back to your actual TRENDnet camera and under Tools, Firmware Upgrade, here you can just choose the file and you select this bin file here and then just click Upload. And that will go through the process and it will reboot the camera. And then when you are done, remember that you want to go back to System here, restore factory defaults, and then start reconfiguring your camera. One of the first things, of course, you'll want to do is click on System Admin and change your password. Another thing you might want to do is go over to Time and Date and select your time zone, Daylight Savings Time, and synchronize with NTP server. We use this one here, 0.pool.ntp.org. and click apply, and then it will go out to the internet and get the correct time and pretty much be right on time all the time. You do want to verify to make sure that it's actually synced the first time, then after that it's usually good to go. So that's really it for this short video. I wanted to show you, the procedure. It's not very hard, but you want to do it, and you want to make sure you don't waste the time of setting up the camera first before upgrading the firmware. If you're down the road of life of this camera and you're upgrading the firmware, remember to take detailed notes of what all your configurations changes you may have made are, so that you can reset to factory defaults after the firmware upgrade and put those settings back in. So there's a link in the description of the video and an annotation as well to head to my website and get all this in more detail with some convenient links. You can also feel free to leave a comment, post questions. I'll try to get to them. We appreciate you watching this video. We will see you next time.